Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I'm ready to do my full review on this little number. This is the ZT460 Ti, or the 0460 Ti. This knife was loaned to me by my buddy Jakeb Ginsburg, who will be linked down below. You may know Jakeb Ginsburg as the creator of some awesome custom fixed blades. Speaking of, I will also soon be doing my review of this guy. This is the Fat Boy. So, Jakeb has become a friend, and he was very generous to loan this to me. So he'll be linked down below, both his Instagram and his Etsy shop, where he lists his custom knives that are for sale. I'm really hoping this wind isn't completely destroying my audio. But yeah, we are here in the canyon today, and I'm ready to talk about this guy. So, as I mentioned in my first impressions of this knife, I was never really very interested in this model from ZT. I've owned quite a few ZTs, I'm sure I'll own more. I like ZT as a brand, but the design language and how swoopy swirly this knife is never spoke to me. I don't usually like Persian-shaped blades. I'm not usually a big fan aesthetically of curved handles, so it just wasn't something that I really ever felt compelled to get for myself. I had held one once just for a second in a knife shop, and that was it. And now that I've had this one for a couple weeks now, it's actually, I gotta make sure I send this back to Jakeb ASAP, because he's been very generous in letting me borrow it for so long. But now that I've had this a couple of weeks, I've carried it a good handful of times. I've used it a very little bit. It's not my knife, so I haven't been hard on it at all, mostly just test cutting on paper and opening a couple of packages. But I've wanted to kind of see what this knife is all about, so I've had it in pocket a good few times. I've carried it as a primary, I've carried it as a secondary. It's kind of in that sweet spot size-wise for me, where it can work for either role. And I've fidgeted with it quite a bit. I've tried to get a sense of what this knife is all about. And I like it more now, having properly experienced it, than I did before. It's still not really a knife that I'm going to be like going out to buy for myself. It's not totally my style, but I respect it, and I get why so many people speak highly of this model. I think, yeah, we'll talk about a couple of things, but I think for me it's just not quite right for my preferences. But there are a lot of things that it does very well. So, first of all, let's talk ingredients, and then we'll talk about my typical kind of things I go over in a review. The blade on this guy is CPM 20CV, and then we have handle scales of titanium. I'm not sure what the backspacer is made out of. It feels kind of plasticky to me, but it works whatever it is. I think it looks pretty good. And then we have a pretty standard steel clip here. It is a frame lock. We do have an over travel stop and a stainless steel insert, a hardened steel insert I should say. And that's about it. We got titanium scales, backspacer, clip, 20 CV blade. So fairly simple in construction. I do like when ZT uses this style pivot. So you'll see it takes a Torx on this side. I wish it was a bigger Torx, if I'm being honest, but I like that it's Torx on this side and then it's captive on this side. You'll see it's like a hex. And so that's nice for disassembly. Anytime I've had a ZT that is that way, I find I quite like that pivot setup. Yeah, so let's talk ergos, action, carry, cutting, all of that kind of stuff, and then we'll kind of end with some thoughts. But ergonomically, this knife for me isn't quite right. The curve of the handle, oftentimes curved handles work pretty well for me. That's really not wanting to focus, is it? There we go. Oftentimes curved handles work pretty well for me. This one, if it was like just the tiniest bit longer, it would work. But I just feel really cramped in it, or my pinky's back here, and my pinky doesn't feel great back here, so when I try to get it up here, then I'm running into the guard pretty hard. It's just, it's not enough space in there for me. That said, it's not terrible. It's just cramped, right? But it's not hot spotty, nothing's really jabbing me. If I do choke back to where my pinky is kind of on this flat back here, come on, it's a little bit better, but it's still not ideal. What I do like is the way with the curved handle that it indexes the blade for me. Another knife with quite a curvy handle that I'm actually a big fan of would be like the Olamic Wayfarer. That knife ergonomically is one of the best folders I've ever experienced. It's really good, and part of that is because of this kind of bulge back here, the way it rests in my palm, but this one just doesn't quite do that, and I think part of it's because it's a little skinnier and it's just not quite long enough. If you had smaller hands than me, it might be better. It also might be better if you had a little bit bigger hands, so your 3 fingers filled out this curve more than mine do. I don't know. Not terrible, but ergonomically, I don't love it. Action. The action on it is good. It's a frame lock on bearings. It's a flipper, and it flips well. It springs right out. On closing, it's not drop shutty, but it's smooth, and you can just kind of wrist it down. It's nothing to write home about. It's a flipper on bearings that works fine. The detent is tuned pretty well. I do fail on it every now and then, especially if I'm putting a little pressure on the lock bar on accident, so I have to be a little careful of that. But I have slipped off more than a couple of times. It's just a small flipper tab, and if you put any pressure, like I said, it kind of seizes up. But when you get it right, flies right open. It's satisfying. It's a good action. Carrying this knife is good. It is very slender this way. Come on, this way. It's very thin this way. It's nice and lightweight. I do wish it had a deep carry pocket clip on it. This pocket clip is just meh to me. It works, it's fine, it functions, but there's nothing special about it, nothing great about it. Could definitely be worse, but I don't like the pocket clip particularly. But yeah, in pocket, the angle of it, if you'll notice, it goes in your pocket and then it kind of swoops back. So for me, when I carry it front right pocket, it's very convenient to reach in and get my wallet, which typically shares a pocket with it. If it's back left pocket, like I carry a secondary, it's just kind of invisible and out of the way. And the thinness, the lightness, the profile all make it a breeze to carry. So carry on it is really good. If it had a deep carry clip, I'd like it definitely a notch better, but it's good. That's ergos, carry, action. So cutting is what we're left with. Cutting with this knife is pretty good. I like that it's nice gradual belly all the way along. This blade shape is pretty functional for me and the cutting tasks I do with EDC knives. I like that. I like that there's a nice precise tip. I like the profile of the tip and the way it carries a little bit of material all the way out to it, so it's not super fragile, but it is precise. The grind on the blade isn't a slicing dream. It's not like stupid thin behind the edge, but it's not crazy thick either. This feels, to me, if my memory serves me right, a little bit like the Benchmade 940. It's kind of thick behind the edge. Not like, oh my gosh, how did they possibly think this was okay? But like, it's just a little thicker than I would like behind the edge. It's definitely thicker than like my PM2, which PM2s aren't crazy thin behind the edge. I think they're kind of like median. They're like not so thick, not so thin. It's pretty acceptable. Based on my finger calipers here, it feels about like a 940 did in what I remember. So very unscientific, but it's not crazy thin. It does have a very sharp edge on it, and the grind itself, it's a flat grind. It comes up not quite full flat. You do have an extra bevel up there, but it works. I mean, it's just not special to me. Like I think that's kind of the theme of this knife. Like everything about it works. Everything about it is fine. The pocket clip is okay. The grind on the blade, okay. I really do like the tip. That I will say is good. It carries good. The ergos are a little less than good, but not bad either. There's a lot about this knife to me that's just kind of like, meh, you know, like it's well made. The construction is nice. The action is another thing that's kind of meh, like it's good, but it doesn't excite me at all. I have way more exciting knives. I've felt more exciting knives that cost less than this, so like it's not incredible, but everything about it works. It is fine. So I think this is one of those things where like if you do like the design elements of this knife, then it takes all of those design elements and it makes them work. If you like the shape of this handle and Persian kind of upswept blades and all that, then like you'll probably enjoy the knife because it's going to work and it's going to do well. Like I said at the very beginning, I don't happen to really vibe with the design language of this knife, so for me there's nothing that's really drawing me in about it. But it's passable. It carries fine, in fact quite good. It cuts just fine. The action is just fine. Like, if your hands are a different size than mine, you might like it a little better, but even for me, it's fine in hand. It's indexed well. I'm not feeling like it's going to come out of my hand. It's pretty locked in, you know, like, it's not the most comfortable handle ever, but it's fine. So I think that's about where I'm leaving off on this knife. It's fine. Nothing special to me. Nothing that I'm going to immediately run out and try to get one for myself. And I guess that's kind of it. This can be a pretty short one, I think. But I do appreciate Jakeb for loaning it to me. It's always fun to check out things that are at least a little bit outside of what I would pick for myself. I tend to review things that I want, right? Naturally, those are the things I want to get, so those are the things that I end up reviewing. And I don't have a ton of interest in just reviewing every knife that's out there. There's a lot of knives that I don't care to own, and I also wouldn't even really care to like experience for a week. But there are some that are like close enough to my comfort zone that it's kind of fun to push my boundaries a little bit. And this one pushes my boundaries a little bit. And sometimes when I do that, I find I love stuff. Like, I pushed my boundaries a little bit when I got the Demko 8020, and now it's one of my favorite knives that I own. So it's good to try new things every now and then. Sometimes it ends up just being meh, but that is what it is. So, anyways, again, Jakeb will link down below. Appreciate it, buddy, for letting me borrow this knife, and that'll be it on the ZT 460 Ti. Sinkovich design. Interesting knife. But that'll be that. So, see you guys on the next one.